a mafia gang and a serial killer. Elements that seemed only combinable in Hollywood movie scripts. Joined forces spectacularly to cause a fire that shocked Canada. That is exactly what happened on the night of March 16, 2023, in Quebec. So, what truly happened at that moment? What role did the above elements play in today's incident? Welcome to the 2023 Old Montreal fire case, where a serial killer ruins the mafia's life on Canada TV. And before starting the video, don't forget to leave a like and hit the subscribe button to support the production team in creating more quality content. Let's dive into today. Bladyville, located right in the heart of the Old Quarter in Quebec, Canada, is a place rich with historical imprints. Cobblestone streets, ancient buildings standing tall for centuries, all paint a nostalgic picture of Montreal's past. Local residents and tourists often come here to enjoy the space imbued with Canadian culture and architecture. In one of those old buildings, an Airbnb guest was enjoying a peaceful evening. The quiet space giving him a sense of relaxation after a long day. But then loud screams echoed from the hallway. He jumped up, heart pounding, pushed the door open, and saw fire and smoke billowing in from outside. Similar to many other buildings in the Old Quarter, the apartment had no windows, so he couldn't look outside to see what was happening. The only things he could sense at that moment were the pungent smell of smoke, the crackling sound of flames, and the distant wail of fire truck sirens. Panic set in. He tried to find an emergency exit but was helpless. The building he was trapped in was William Watson O'Kimby, a structure built in 1890. Initially used as offices for a flower production company named O'Kimby. By the 1940s, it was transferred for use by government agencies. Later in the 1960s, the upper floors gradually converted into apartments until the 1970s and 1980s. In 1994, the ground floor was used as office space, and it officially became a cultural heritage site of Montreal in 1999. Records show that in 2009, the building was purchased by Benamo, a lawyer. Right from the start of this deal, there were many suspicious rumors that William Watson O'Kimby would be closely scrutinized in the future. The building has 15 apartments, 12 of which were legally rented out on Airbnb, a startup model aimed at connecting people needing accommodation with those with rooms for rent worldwide. This made rescue operations extremely complex in the following hours. Helicopters roared in the sky, sweeping beams of light through the thick, suffocating smoke. On the ground, rescue teams raced against time, fighting the flames while trying to get trapped people out. Some stood on rooftops, others desperately clung to window ledges waiting for a miracle. At least 4 people were brought down by ladders. Others were rescued by aerial rescue ladders. However, no one knew exactly how many more were still trapped. When the victim list was confirmed, the rescue team discovered 6 Airbnb guests were unaccounted for. Among them was Charlie Duckroy, 18 years old. The person called for help twice in despair, but no one arrived in time. Although the victims' families consistently asserted that their relatives had booked through Airbnb, local authorities took several days to confirm this. To assist in the search, rescue teams used infrared sensor drones to locate the bodies. Nevertheless, hope of finding survivors quickly vanished. The building was already old before the fire occurred. The flames only made everything more ruinous, causing immense difficulties for rescue forces accessing the scene. On March 18, 2023, 6 Airbnb guests were officially declared missing. For their relatives, those were long, drawn-out days of despair. A temporary memorial was set up right outside the scene, so families could await news from the rescue team. Bouquets of flowers were placed in the courtyard of the beige gray stone building, located in the old neighborhood of Montreal to commemorate the fire victims. Meanwhile, the building remained at risk of collapse at any moment. Workers were implementing necessary measures. To protect the structure of the three-story building, rescue forces had to proceed with dismantling floor by using cranes and infrared sensor drones to access the scene. According to Marie-Eva Bouchelet, spokesperson for the Montreal Fire Department, over 100 firefighters participated in extinguishing the fire at this building. Until now, no one knew that the true cause of the fire was more terrifying than anything they could have imagined. Airbnb remained silent, only stating that they would remove illegal rental apartments in Quebec. On the authority side, Montreal Tourism Minister Caroline Brew met with representatives of the platform and warned that legal regulations would soon be tightened. 11 days after the fire, all victims' bodies were found, and there were no survivors. The victims included Charlie Glockroy, 18 years old, Walid McCullough, 18 years old, Dr. Anku, 31 years old, Denia Jaffa, 31 years old, Sunhia Khan, 31 years old, Nathan Shears, 35 years old, and Camille Neal, 78 years old. Among them, Nathan Shears and Anku were scholars who had come to Montreal to attend a conference. Camille Neal was a renowned photographer and filmmaker whose works had been preserved in a collection of the National Gallery of Canada. She was a long-term tenant of this building and had lived there for over 30 years. The search operation concluded on March 29th. But for the victims' families, this was only the beginning of a painful journey. A legal journey demanding that those responsible face legal punishment. A series of questions arose. Who is responsible? Why could such a tragedy occur? Notably, Montreal had banned MVNP since 2018, as the authorities aimed both to protect the neighborhood's identity and to ensure an adequate housing supply for local residents. So why are there more than a dozen apartments listed on MVNP? The building owner, Emile Benamo, blames a tenant, claiming he knew nothing about MVNP's operations. But reports suggest the reality may be completely opposite. Benamo knew very well but deliberately turned a blind eye to share in the profits. Short-term rentals generate quick profits, so MVNP owners are willing to pay high prices to secure apartments. This way, MVNP circumvents rent control laws, driving prices above normal levels. The building's original residents say they were forced to leave, so MVNP could turn this place into a disguised MVNP. They were harassed with various tactics like surprise inspections, power cuts, and even direct threats. Not just this building, MVNP also owns 4 other buildings, with over 20 apartments rented out on MVNP. When the fire occurred, the spotlight shone directly on his dark side. A past full of legal scandals, including business misconduct and ties to organized crime. Emin Benamer is not an ordinary landlord. He is a lawyer, but his clients are members of the Christo organization, a branch of the Montreal mafia. The name Benamer appears multiple times in court documents, especially after a major police crackdown. Not stopping there, Benamer has been accused of shady legal tactics, including coercing teenagers to confess to armed robbery. A conviction later overturned due to serious misconduct. Benamer's biggest scandal peaked in 2021, when he admitted to evading nearly $470,000. So where did this money come from? It is suspected that the money came from the illegal MVNP apartment chain that he owns. 21 deposits were made into his personal account and are almost certainly linked to Benamer's over 20 short-term rental apartments. To many, it seems he is willing to do anything for money, regardless of consequences, even at the cost of human lives. After the fire, those who had conflicts with Benamer spoke out, calling him ruthless. As for Airbnb, the platform was aware of the dangerous condition of the building a year before the fire occurred, when a woman who had rented a room here reported that, "As soon as I entered the room, I was stunned by the strong smell of cigarettes. It was terrible. I immediately thought of opening the windows, but they were all sealed shut." Nevertheless, Airbnb only responded with a brief email stating, "We have noted and reported all your concerns." No legal action was taken, and no investigation was conducted. Upon hearing about the fire, this woman contacted Airbnb again in extreme anger. "That is the building I warned you about. I asked you to inspect it because it was too dangerous." Not much different from before, Airbnb still coldly and indifferently replied with an automated message. We are sorry about your unpleasant experience on our platform. Joseph Rotman, a former tenant here, also had an equally terrible experience. He initially thought the room was a bit small and old, but still had a charming touch. But he quickly realized the room had no windows. This meant staying in the room was no different from being in a sealed box. It was truly a deadly trap. The video Joseph shared began spreading on social media. And soon after, it spread an astonishing. Clearly, Airbnb had been warned at least twice in the year before the fire. But they showed no signs of concern. When the incident occurred, many other issues with the building were discovered. The building looked fine on the outside, but inside it was rotten to the core. From 2009 to 2018, this building violated numerous fire safety regulations. Some residents have reported that there were no smoke detectors and no exit signs. One insider angrily shared that they had repeatedly mentioned this over a long period. And if only there had been a battery in the fire alarm, people might have survived. However, even with full batteries, these fire alarms were too small and did not meet standards. The emergency exit was blocked due to structural issues, and the apartments had no windows. On Sunday, May 20, 2018, during the long Victoria holiday, around 7 p.m., Montreal Fire Department received a fire call from a short-term rental resident on the second floor. After deploying rescue operations and inspecting the building, the fire department informed residents that the building owner, Benamo, would be fined due to improperly designed emergency exits and non-functional smoke detectors. The fire department also announced that the short-term rental apartment the resident was staying in was illegal. Therefore, building owner Benamo would be fined and had to stop short-term rentals. When the 2023 disaster occurred, the fire department's earlier notice was mentioned again. However, surprisingly, residents inquired with the city's relevant authorities and were told that no fines were issued after the fire department's emergency response in 2018. Additionally, during a building renovation, firefighters had warned about serious issues related to emergency exits, feeling that tenant safety was being ignored. But were these warnings ever addressed? No one knows for sure. The community began questioning, why did the fire department stop inspecting the building? In response, the fire team denied this and affirmed they had done everything responsibly. Benamo, the building owner, blamed the firefighters. He claimed they lacked the resources to extinguish the fire and ignored his warnings about people trapped in illegal Airbnb units. But even as the investigation was ongoing, a major revelation emerged. The accident hypothesis was ruled out, and the case turned into a criminal investigation. Police found traces of accelerants, explaining why the fire spread so quickly no one could react. Footage extracted from surveillance cameras exposed the truth. An explosion caused the fire to erupt and engulf the entire building. In the flames, the figure of a man leaving the scene was seen. And it didn't take long for authorities to identify the main culprit. It was Dennis Bacon, 63, a murderer who was being intensely pursued. Bacon had committed murder but escaped from a prison in Quebec. He was called the Halloween Killer after murdering a teenager at a Halloween party. Criminal records show he is a dangerous psychopath. He has a series of prior convictions for break-ins and arson. Even a doctor had warned about his paranoid personality. Bacon has antisocial tendencies and an extremely high risk of violence. Currently, he is the prime suspect in this horrific fire incident. Bacon was arrested in May 2023 but had not been charged by 2024. More than a year after the fire, the victims' families remain immersed in pain and anger. They quickly filed a lawsuit. The plaintiffs are relatives of Nathan Shear. They're demanding $22 million USD in compensation from the building owner, the city government, and Airbnb. When Nathan Shear's mother learned he was missing, she panicked and immediately went online to search for information about any possible incidents in Montreal. An accident, a shooting, a purge. She searched for clues and then stumbled upon news of the fire in the old building. At that moment, she knew her son might be gone forever. Returning to the host Emile Benhamo, he refused to stay idle and retaliated with a countersuit. worth $7.6 million US, targeting the city government directly. Benhamo claimed that overly strict heritage preservation regulations prevented him from improving necessary safety measures. Specifically, a 105-year-old door that could not be replaced contributed to the tragedy. But these justifications are not very convincing, because previously, he had been sued for ignoring safety issues in the building. While Benhamo tries to defend himself, the survivors must grapple with horrific trauma. Benjamin Maddage, one of the escapees, shared that what haunts him most is the survivor's guilt. He can never forget the help he received the very next morning. But when looking at the ongoing investigation, which is moving at an unbelievably slow pace, he feels immense sorrow for those who are not as fortunate. To this day, the victims' families are still waiting for justice, but justice has yet to arrive. After the fire, Montreal required all Airbnb units to publicly display their registration numbers. The people, from the pain of loss, have turned their anger toward both the government and the Airbnb platform. They believe everything is too late. On March 7, 2024, a building in Blé de Jove was spray-painted. Protesters began taking to the streets. They voiced that they want the government to take stronger action, not simply declare that everything was done correctly on paper. They want the government to understand that Airbnb is contributing to pushing the housing crisis to its peak. 7 families lost loved ones, but no one is taking responsibility. At this point, the Montreal house fire disaster still leaves indescribable pain for the survivors. So, who ultimately bears the responsibility? Is it the Airbnb, the host Emile Benhamo, or the murderer Dennis Bacon? It all remains an unsolved mystery. What is your opinion? Please leave your thoughts for us to know. Forget to like, subscribe to the Realm of the Unseen channel, and hit the notification bell soon. And now, goodbye and see you in the next content.
If the veil stirred, subscribe and meet the next encounter.